Prince George, future King of the United Kingdom.
In today's report, we are going to be looking at Channel 5's new documentary called Prince George, A New Future King. The documentary looked at Prince George and how his upbringing will probably change the way that he will rule when he is older. A whole host of experienced royal journalists feature in this insightful documentary about 10-year-old Prince George, basically showing us how Prince George's upbringing is very different to the previous heirs to the throne, and how we as royal fans are watching Prince George grow before our eyes and learn his place in the monarchy.
The future of the monarchy rests on his shoulders.
It's possible that Prince George will be pressed into service rather sooner than his parents might have wished.
The documentary started off very interestingly, looking back at what happened in the royal family before Prince George was born. One of the most famous moments that happened before Prince George was born was when the beloved late Queen Elizabeth II jumped out of a plane with actor Daniel Craig. Back in 2012, this clip of the late Queen Elizabeth actually brought in a whole host of new royal fans, as well as being one of the most iconic clips of her.
Then in December 2012, Kate made headlines with an announcement that would change the royals forever.
Some breaking news out of Buckingham Palace. The Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton, is pregnant.
So there'll be a new kid on the royal block next summer, and he or she will be third in line to the throne.
For the royal birth, the couple selected St Mary's Hospital, where Princess Diana had delivered William.
The documentary went from looking at what happened before Prince George was born to actually looking at his the day he was actually born. And he was obviously born at the Lindo Wing in St Mary's Hospital, and obviously probably one of the most famous parts of a hospital. And yes, it was looking back at the importance of why they chose it.
This is BBC News at 11 o'clock. I'm Joanna Gosling, live at Buckingham Palace as the country marks the birth of the latest member of the royal family.
Royal journalists in the Channel 5 documentary looked at the historic moment that Prince George made his debut to the public.
A day old, the bumper 8-pound 4-ounce prince had his first photo call.
Obviously, the documentary showed how proud his parents were, and it was so lovely to see that moment again, because I remember being 8 years old myself and going, that is our future king. It was such a surreal moment.
He was baptised with water taken from the River Jordan. That is a tradition that the royals have observed for many years.
This is a family christening, you know. Then you have Prince George wearing a replica of this kind of 18th century gown, which kind of reminds you that this is a royal baby who is going to be defender of faith, head of the Church of England.
Whilst the holy water and christening gown were a nod to royal tradition, news cameras captured William and Kate taking a more modern approach to the rest of the ceremony.
When it comes to the godparents, it wasn't just older royals.
You only had one who was a royal family member, and that was Zara Tindall. All of the other godparents were out of the royal family.
In this extraordinary first, the reigning monarch is pictured alongside 3 generations of her successors.
Royal fans, when this was posted back in 2013, also noticed that it showed that they were modernising the royal family. So not only were they becoming a family, they were also putting family before duty. In my opinion, this photo really showed that the Prince and Princess of Wales were going to put Prince George at the centre of their work and make sure that their work worked around him. Obviously, the next time we saw Prince George after his christening was actually on his first official tour to Australia. Royal commentators on the documentary mentioned how Prince George was actually preparing for this role before he could even walk. So back in 2014, Prince George and his parents spent 10 days in Australia and then 10 days in New Zealand, and the documentary mentioned how they just could not leave him at home. The Prince and Princess of Wales had a different take on royal life, and instead of leaving Prince George at home like previous royals would have done with their young babies, they actually brought him along and included him in royal life.
Evolution in the way that royal children have been educated.
Prince George started his schooling aged 4 at Thomas's in Battersea, South London.
So the documentary also touched on Prince George's modern education. So instead of going to a traditional school, following in tradition where, where his father went, he went, instead the Prince and Princess of Wales chose a completely different school to where previous royals have gone to, and chose one that reflected their values. And so Prince George started his education at Thomas's in Battersea, and this reflected the Prince and Princess of Wales's values.
The young prince's education continued, age 9, at Lambrook School in Berkshire.
The philosophy of Lambrook School is an ethos of sort of happiness, kindness, and concern about the world in which the students live. So I think it breeds a very well-rounded student.
Possibly more important to Kate and William than education is privacy. To keep George free of the intrusions he suffered, a deal was struck.
There is an agreement with the press that they don't take pictures of the children when they're, with their nannies, when they're out and about, when they're playing in the garden, so the kids can run around outside and have time in public and semi-public spaces without worrying about their faces ending up on the cover of the papers the next day.
One of their really smart moves to devalue any value in paparazzi shots of the children is to issue their own family snaps on big occasions like Christmas. So, generally taken by Catherine, those happy family photos have been released and published on those big occasions, but the rest of the time, the children are away from the cameras.
I think Catherine taking the majority of the photos of her family have resulted in probably a lot more intimate versions of them that we're seeing in the public sphere now, because, of course, when your own mother is taking the picture, it's a different energy, it's a different atmosphere. Probably they're a lot more comfortable, and it's just a candid family shot.
This is another example of how Kate and William are doing things differently and preparing George to be a very modern monarch.
The next part of the documentary mentioned Prince George's training into royal life, and that actually started obviously on his first royal tour. But obviously monarchs have to meet world leaders, and Prince George met his first world leader when he was just 2 years old. He met President Obama in his dressing gown.
Prince George, a young boy destined for great things. He is in line for the most exclusive job in the world and needs to learn the ropes.
I think it's an incredibly complex thing to have that weight of responsibility and royal duty on your shoulders at such a young age. I can imagine, quite disconcerting.
The documentary also mentioned that Prince George would not only be a head of state for the United Kingdom, but also for the Commonwealth as well, and so an early introduction to that was going on royal tours, especially in particular Commonwealth countries, to give him an introduction. Prince George's training for being a future monarch didn't stop there. Last year, he was the Page of Honour at his grandfather, King Charles III's coronation. This maybe gave Prince George a small snapshot into what his future role may entail.